Hello, everyone, and good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Welcome to the Aircraft Builders Council's second virtual seminar. We're very pleased that you joined us today, and thank you for that. I am Joe Gaug, President of the Board of Trustees for the Aircraft Builders Council. I'm delighted to tell you that we have over 225 people registered for today's event, so thank you again for joining us. We anticipate that this seminar will take approximately an hour, and that's inclusive of a question and answer session. We're going to try to keep it on time. Before I begin, I want to give a special thanks to the ABC Board of Trustees who have been instrumental in assisting me and the ABC staff in this very difficult and trying year. First is Peter Rouchet, who is with Eastman Chemical Corporation, and Peter is our Vice President. Second is David McLean with PPG Industries. David is a past president and is currently our treasurer. Dana Wastow, who is with Sequa Corporation, and Dana is our secretary. Tim Sullivan, with Hitchner Manufacturing. And then finally, I'd also like to welcome and say thank you to our newest board member, Brian Merkley with Huntsman Corporation. Brian was elected to the Board of Trustees at our annual spring meeting just last week. So thank you, Brian. Also want to thank Simon Abbott, who's on the line and will be assisting with our question and answer session. Simon is with Global Aerospace, and so thank you, Simon. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Stephen Carver. Stephen is from Cranfield University, Europe's preeminent management and technology institute, where he's a top lecturer in the subjects of crisis and change management. Stephen has taught in nearly every country in the world and has been on national press, TV, and radio. He also owns his own successful project management company. Stephen is an expert in what he calls extreme change management. Excuse me, Stephen. He's a past ABC presenter, and you're going to find his presentation energetic, entertaining, and interesting. So again, Stephen, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for your time, and the floor is yours.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be doing a story. I'm going to have to do it very rapidly. We've only got 45 minutes to do about, well, 60 years. And the story itself is very complicated. Lots of companies and people coming and going and mergers and acquisitions. So it's what we call structurally complex. It also has a high degree of what we call emergent complexity. In other words, it's changing by the day. And in fact, this afternoon, it's actually changed by the minute, because I'm going to bring you literally up to date with what's happened for SpaceX about 1 hour ago. And also socio-political. Please forgive me, I will be mentioning some of your companies. Look, it's all about the history. And by the way, if you can add to my story, please feel free. But let's dive in and see how it goes, because I'm talking about a revolution above our heads, which is going to change everything. In fact, it's changing everything now, and a lot of people are still not on the curve. So, survival of the fittest, and I'm sure we all kind of use that quote, especially over the appalling year that we've just had. But in fact, he never said it. In fact, he spent most of his life saying, do you know what? I never said that. What he did say was that it is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent. It is the one most responsive and adaptable to change. So let's talk about an organization that went through massive change. Let's talk about an organization, real colleagues and friends of mine, one of the greatest organizations on planet Earth. They've had some good times and they've had some bad times. It started well.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
Now, why did he make this speech? The answer is nothing really to do with science, mostly to do with politics. At the time, it was the height of the Cold War. It was Russia, CCCP, Soviet Union, call it what you will, communism versus capitalism led by the USA. And the USA were doing very, very badly in this particular war above our heads in space. The communists, well, the first object to orbit the Earth, man-made anyway, was Sputnik, built by good communist engineers. First living object in space was a dog called Laika, A sadly one-way trip for poor Laika. She came back in, as you Americans say, hot dog. First man in space, Yuri Gagarin, not true, actually. First man in space came back in an ashtray, tragically. First woman in space, Valentina Tereshkova, CCCP, communist. First spacewalk, the amazing Alexei Leonov, almost died, couldn't get back into the craft, managed it eventually. Communist. First space station, Salyut 1, communist. And you can imagine JFK after his second bottle of Jack Daniels saying, damn it, we're going to beat those Ruskies to the moon by the close of the decade. And so the space race was born. NASA said, give us unlimited funding, and virtually they were given unlimited funding. They actually went from an industry of 30,000 to an industry of 450,000 in 36 months. Think that one through. Have budget, will spend. Now I can say this because I am a chartered engineer. If you give engineers unlimited money, they will spend it. They have that sort of capability, and they'll spend it mostly on what I call kit. When I say kit, look, if it's got a red flashing LED on it and it's made of 316 stainless or something more exotic, I want it. Regardless of purpose, it's just nice kit. And so it was with NASA. During the heat of the space race in the 1960s, NASA realized they also want to have to record things. Normal pens need gravity. So after considerable R&D, the first working zero-G astronaut pen, $1 million, 50 pence. Well, sort of, faced with the same problem, they issued the pencils. Not actually true. It's a modern myth, but it does give an insight as to how the Americans approached it, which was high-tech, leading edge, often bleeding edge, and the Russians who used really basic, almost boiler technology, and their stuff seemed to last. And they did it. And I am not knocking it. It was phenomenal what they managed to do in those 8 short years. It was unbelievable.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
And of course, the most important deliverable was, well, some people would say this wonderful photograph, which says basically we beat communism. And that's if you believe they went, let's not even go there. And the heroes were, of course, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Lightyear, and of course, Michael Collins. In my personal opinion, that is not the most important picture. That one was the most important picture. That showed us the marble ball of Earth. What a tiny blue speck, so fragile in the vacuum of space. Apollo 12. Now we have about 250 people on the line. Does anyone know the names of the people that went on Apollo 12? These 3 very, very brave people. It was a far more dangerous mission than the first one in many ways. It was actually Conrad, Bean and Gordon, but quite honestly, who gives a damn? That's the trouble. You do something once that's amazing, everyone goes, wow. You do it twice and people have seen that before. Who? Now, we all remember Apollo 13. Why? Well, it's an excellent movie, and Tom Hanks is a good actor. We had to get him back. He's very good. The last Apollo mission was Apollo 17. The last man to walk on the moon was an amazing guy called Gene Cernan. There should have been an Apollo 18, 19, and 20. They'd been paid for, they'd been built, they'd been assembled, but they never went to the moon. Why not? Because by now the American people were bored. Bored. You see, going to the moon, are you? Well, whoopee do you. How much is this costing? And what's the benefit? We got civil rights, we got the Vietnam War, and we're sending people we don't even know their names to a planet we don't really care about. Why are we doing this? Well, by that time, it really was a vote winner because, hey, 450,000 jobs in aerospace depended on the space industry. What are you going to do? Fire them all? I don't think so. So politically, it had to go somewhere. And they said, well, let's try and make space affordable. Let's have reusable rockets. And it was a good thing, a good thought, way ahead of its time. So let's come up with something like this. That was one of the original designs for what we could later call the shuttle. Unfortunately, the whole of NASA had to change its culture from basically have as much money as you like to a different culture, which was all about cost. And that's difficult for a whole industry of 450,000 people to get overnight. Also, massive political interference. A culture change was required, but it never really happened properly. And things started going wrong. People felt under pressure. And eventually they came up with this terrible compromise called the Space Shuttle. And compromise it was. Most of the engineers working on it reckoned that they were going to have a failure on it because there were too many compromises because of the time and money pressure. To give you an idea, by the way, what these engineers managed to do, because it is an incredible craft, it's the most complex machine mankind has ever created. There you go. Basically, what you have to do is you have to take something that weighs 3 times the weight of the Statue of Liberty and throw it vertically 100 miles against Earth's gravity into space and accelerate it from 0 to 17,500 miles an hour and do that in less than 7 minutes. This is what we call a big engine. Now, it had liquid fuel, which I'm sure most of you know all about. Aircraft use it, of course. In this case, they were using liquid oxygen, liquid hydrogen, but also the white tubes, which were basically propellant, solid explosive, called PBAN. Now, NASA unfortunately tried to tackle this by basically having more management. Now, I teach at a management school. Of course, management's important, but it can get carried away with itself. Too little leadership. Oh dear, just follow the cookie cutter rules. Silos. My department's okay. The others might be behind. Well, that's their problem. Politics, huge politics. Who's going to get the votes? Who's going to get the work? Management by fear. 1 or 2 of NASA divisions were, unfortunately, because of their history, run very much in a very, well, management by fear technique. A compliance over innovation, providing the paperwork's good. Look, we don't want any new ideas. Communication breakdowns. Oh dear. 1981, 2 very brave people got on board. Cribbett and Young pressed the button and it worked. We now know that they were really rather lucky. Why? Because the shuttle had a design fault. Because of the way it was manufactured in pieces, these solid fuel booster rockets had to be assembled at the Cape, and that meant you had to have field joints. Now, anybody here knows anything about field joints, inverted clevis in this case, you're going to have a seal, an O-ring. And as you know, if you have anything to do with aircraft engines, seals are great within certain tolerances. The chief, or one of the engineers, or a guy called Roger Beaujolais, responsible for the design of these O-rings, these seals, got really scared, not just from the test data, but also now from the flight data. There was evidence that the seals had blow-by and erosion, which was not predictable and could lead to catastrophic effect. He tried to convince people that this had to be redesigned. But in fact, they said, unless you can prove to us on paper with full compliance, with full numbers that it will blow up, then no, you can't have extra money for innovation and new designs. And so I'm afraid gut feel and judgment were basically not the order of the day in NASA. As long as you follow the rules, that's okay. And he kept on saying, I can't prove it will blow up until it does blow up. And of course, after a few of these, they said, oh, it's Roger and the rest of the team just wanting more money. No, they didn't. They wanted to solve a problem. In 1986, sadly, their luck ran out. This was the Christa McAuliffe flight, the 25th flight, maximum publicity. It was the coldest flight they'd ever gone with. And Roger Beaujolais and the team said, don't fly. The O-rings cannot fly in cold temperatures like that. It was actually 25 degrees Fahrenheit, lower than the year before, where they knew they had horrific problems with O-rings. They hadn't failed, but it was close. Roger Beaujolais tried to persuade his management to stop the flight, so did most of the other designers, but unfortunately this thing was just rolling. Let's hear from him.
If I were to go through the list of the astronauts that are on board, I probably would crack my voice and tears would form again. And yeah, I do get very emotional because of the fact that human lives were lost needlessly. Because I never considered it an accident, and I will never consider it an accident. It was predetermined what would happen, and people just did not listen.
People just did not listen. And they took off. The engineers predicted that either both of the, it was a double O-ring, both of the O-rings might fail on the launch pad, in which case the whole thing just blows up on the launch pad. If they were lucky, the first one would certainly go on the launch pad, as it did. But when they go for throttle up, the second one will go and everyone would die.
65%, 3 engines running normally, 3 good fuel cells, 3 good APUs.
Challenger, go and throttle up.
Roger, go and throttle up.
Terrible pictures etched on all of our memories, I'm sure. Did they die? No. And it's a rather unpleasant part of the story, but the astronauts did survive. You can check this out on the NASA website. I'm not making this stuff up. They were actually thrown out of the explosion, full hull integrity, and basically they know that they were alive because they started going through emergency systems to turn on oxygen masks. Unfortunately, they couldn't get out of the craft, and it took almost 3 minutes, and they were conscious all the way down until they hit the water and had their necks broken or drowned. Unpleasant. NASA should have completely changed their culture. How on earth did we get to this stage where basically we knew that the accident was going to happen and we couldn't stop it? NASA said, oh, we can fix this. 2 O-rings, that's bad. Why don't we have 3? This is insane. You have to completely redesign it and change your culture. A new guy came in to try and shake up NASA, but he got hugely frustrated and occasionally made speeches which he should not have made. Faster, cheaper, better. I can buy into that. But then he said things like, when I asked for a budget to be cut and I'm told it's got an impact on safety, I think that's a bunch of crap. Now, he probably didn't mean to say that. It was just at the moment, but unfortunately that then spread a culture of safety really doesn't matter that much anymore. Disasters happen when decisions are made by leaders who can't remember what the consequences were last time. And so I'm afraid the next accident was almost inevitable. In fact, the shuttle safety panel 1 year before Columbia actually predicted it. And they said, quote, all of our instincts suggest the present regime and culture is planting the seeds for an accident. And 12 months later, they were proven right. By the way, out of those 9 people, 5 were immediately fired for saying that. And again, when you've got a culture whereby you're firing people who are actually trying to raise issues, you have an issue. What happened on Columbia? Basically, a foam strike. Foam came off the orange tank, hit the wing. It had happened before, should never have happened. But they said, well, it shouldn't have happened, but it hasn't caused that much damage. And so this is what we call normalization of deviance. And so on this particular day, a very large piece came away. It hit the wing, it was seen from the ground. The engineers, now it's up in space, said, look, there could massive damage to the wing. Go out, have a look, do a spacewalk, take a spy satellite picture. And the NASA manager said, no, because if we look for a problem, we'll find a problem. And if we don't look for a problem, we can't find a problem. If you can't find a problem, there is no problem. These are some of the smartest people on the planet. I've met many of them. IQs the size of, goodness knows what, but under extreme commercial and political pressure, making very bad decisions. One Didmore, a really good man, quoted, we didn't believe that pictures would be useful to us. We felt there's nothing we could have done anyway. So we decided not even to take them. I wish they had have taken them because this is what they would have seen. There was now a hole straight through the wing, the leading edge, which meant that when they came in for re-entry, they were going to burn up. If they'd actually identified that, they could have done something about it. I'll come on to that in a second. 1st of February 2003, it was brought in, and Leroy Kane, mission control, a big tough man, in floods of tears because he realized what had happened, and they all died. They stood no chance. Rubbish. You read the Cade report done by Admiral Gearman, who I've had a lunch with. He's a remarkable individual. And by the way, rescue mission was challenged. That's not an over lunch conversation. That is straight out of the report. For the nerds amongst you, I count myself as a space nut, it's the Cade report appendix D13, downloadable off the NASA website. If they'd taken the photographs, they could have readied another shuttle. It would have been tight, but achievable. And they would have actually done a crew-to-crew rescue. And it would now be a Hollywood movie. It goes on to say they possibly, extreme, but they possibly could have even repaired Columbia and brought her home. Wow, would that have ever made a movie? But there you go, the opportunity was lost and 7 good people lost their lives. NASA then rethought their whole culture, and I'll give it to them, they got it right, but it was almost too late. It took them 2 years to get their culture sorted out before they were allowed to fly again. And the thing is, if it takes you 2 years to sort yourself out, I'm afraid the rest of the world doesn't wait for you. They carry on moving. So they went back into space, and it is an amazing craft with amazing people. But eventually they said, it's getting old, it's getting unsafe, mostly software problems. And in July 2011, they said, we can't fly this thing anymore. It's getting too old. Great pressure to keep flying. Why? Because from that moment on, NASA had to swallow a very bitter pill, which was if they needed to get people up to the International Space Station, they had to go and beg the Russians to take them. That hurt. Now, they could have gone perhaps with my old boss, but possibly not yet. NASA were now in a bit of disarray. They hadn't got a reusable shuttle. They were having to go to the Russians to get up into space. And then some of their own heroes started making speeches about them, which they didn't like. Gene Kranz, the hero of Apollo 13, one of the greatest mission controllers in NASA's history, made this speech when he retired. NASA has become just another federal bureaucracy, beset by competing agendas, unable to establish discipline within its structure. Although NASA has an amazing array of technology and the most talented workforce in history, it lacks top-level vision, energy, get up and go, call it what you will. After the shuttle accidents, NASA began its retreat from the inherent risks of space exploration, and during the last decade, its retreat has turned into a rout. Wow, this is one of the heroes of NASA. What happened? Well, there's again a bit of a vacuum. There's lots of young people coming out wanting to get into the space industry, and they look at NASA and think, is that really the place for me? What happened? A paradigm shift. A young man said, come and join me. That young man, Elon Musk, you can love him or you can loathe him. It doesn't matter. He has changed everything. Yeah, he made a few billion in PayPal, you know, right place, right time, right industry. You can almost write them off. But he then said, oh, I'm going to get into car manufacturing. And everyone said, yeah, come on then, Elon. What do you know about cars? Nothing. General Motors and Ford must have howled with laughter. He's now got the highest prized car production company on planet Earth by value. He then said, I'm going to go into solar power. And everyone said, hang on, boy. What do you know about solar power? It's really complicated stuff. He said, nothing. He's now got one of the largest solar companies on planet Earth. And then he said, oh, now I'm going to go into the space industry. And even I howled, oh, come on, this is grown-up stuff. You can't make it up as you go along. Space rockets, space is really hard maths. What do you know about it, Elon? Nothing. He said, yeah, but, oh, and by the way, yes, he's got huge problems with his Twitter account and the naming of his children, but that's another thing. But he started talking about reusable spacecraft. And people said, we tried that with the shuttle. He said, I can do it. I can do it. How do you know this? I don't know. I just got vision. And then I want to go to Mars. And people have said, how much are you smoking, son? And he said, it's got to be affordable. And everyone said, yeah, well, you know, the best people in the world have tried to do this, Elon. I don't think you're going to do it. Well, he founded a lovely quote, by the way, when he founded SpaceX. He said, at the moment, the space industry seems to work on the principle. It's just like taking a brand new plane and a 380 and flying everyone first class, from London to San Francisco. Once they land at San Francisco, you scrap the plane. It's insane. When you put it like that, you think, yeah, it is. Rockets going up and then burning up in the atmosphere, one-shot rockets. It's insane. You wouldn't do that in the aircraft industry. He said, let's make space just like the aircraft industry. And everyone said, yeah, don't be silly. He founded his company. Well done, son. 4 years later, having spent billions, he got a rocket that went up and went down. Everyone said, well done, Elon. Spend a few billion. Yes, I'm sure you can do it. And yeah, let's ignore the billions, one of the richest men on planet Earth. Look at this. I don't believe in process. In fact, when I interview a potential employee and he or she says, it's all about the process, I see that as a bad sign. Whoa, most of the aerospace, it's all about the process. And then he said, go fast, break things, and then fix them. Oh, excuse me, that's not how we do it in aerospace. It's not how we do it in space. Well, that's how I'm going to do it. And sure enough, inevitably, accident after accident after accident after explosion. Go onto YouTube, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of it's fantastic stuff. And he came back and said, yeah, that's okay. Failure is an option here. If you're not failing, you're not innovating enough. And everyone said, no, it's just that you don't know what you're doing, son. He then went to Congress and said, I'd just like to actually, bid for, military work and, putting up satellites, for you, I'll do it, less cost. And they said, no, I don't think so. But some congressman said, are you willing to spend your money on this? He said, yeah, I'm prepared to bankrupt myself. And by the way, he almost did. And people said, well, if it's your money, off you go, son. What happened then was the existing space industry turned on him and said, hey, stop this guy. He's just a child. He doesn't know what he's doing. We've been here for decades. We know what we're doing. They lined up some of the top people in the space industry. They actually lined up Neil Armstrong, first man on the moon, and Gene Cernan, last man on the moon. Deep respect for both of them. And they both went to Congress and said, basically, this boy doesn't know what he doesn't know. He was then interviewed on 60 Minutes. Let's watch.
People who've been in the rocketry business for decades, who say about you that you don't know what you don't know. You know, there are American heroes who don't like this idea. Neil Armstrong, Gene Cernan have both testified against commercial spaceflight and the way that you're developing it.
But having cut my teeth in rockets more than 50 years ago, I am not confident. The most experienced rocket engineers with whom I have spoken believe that it will require many years and substantial investment to reach the necessary level of safety and reliability.
Now is the time to overrule this administration's pledge to mediocrity.
Neil Armstrong, Gene Cernan have both testified against commercial spaceflight and the way that you're developing it, and I wonder what you think of that.
I was very sad to see that because those guys are, those guys are heroes of mine, so it's really tough. I wish they would come and visit and see the hardware that we're doing here. And I think that would change their mind.
They inspired you to do this, didn't they?
Yes.
And to see them casting stones in your direction.
It's difficult.
So the grown-ups have come into the room and the boy's blubbing. It's a bit sad, really, isn't it? Well, actually not. 2008, he had his first commercial flight. First commercial satellite went up in 2009, the first reusable flight in 2010, the first flight to the International Space Station carrying cargo, 2012. And by now people are saying, how's this boy doing this? ULA, basically Lockheed Martin and Boeing, and please forgive me, I know some of you are actually parts of those organizations and fine companies they are too, but he actually decided to take them on. And they've been hugely successful, never had a failure actually, delivering stuff for the US military. He said, look, I can do it for less money. March 2014 in front of Senate. Let's have a look at what was said. If you took something like a GPS satellite, which is about $140 million, you could actually have a free satellite with a SpaceX launch, because our launch plus the satellite would cost $240 million, rather than just their launch at $380 million, which is an enormous difference. Yes, it is. And Congressman said, tell me more. And you could argue about the costings and how he's allocating cost, and people get very excited by this, but these are big numbers to throw in to a Senate hearing. Oh, and by the way, we won't actually ask for the annual $1 billion subsidy that ULA is getting. Really, Elon? You can do it with your own money? Yep. Had SpaceX been awarded the missions ULA received under its recent non-competed 36 core block buy, we could have saved the taxpayers $11.6 billion. Now people were saying, I'm listening to him. Then it was interesting. Something happened right at the end of the tenure of Barack Obama, which quite shocked me. Asteroid mining made legal by Barack Obama. The move marks a major change in space law, which has treated space as something that belongs to everyone on Earth. The new law is called the US Commercial Space Launch Competitiveness Act. Wow. New rules will allow harvesting of the often vast amounts of expensive resources inside asteroids that fly near Earth. On July 15 of that year, a rock with a platinum core passed that was worth 3.5 trillion pounds sterling. Wow. Goldman Sachs, large investment bank, said the law could tank the worldwide platinum market overnight. Wow, there's riches up there. Then this happened, and when it happened, I literally fell off my sofa.
Waiting for where's the engine? Slow it down, right to deploy.
What have you seen? What you've seen is remarkable. He's actually launched a SpaceX rocket, it's delivered a satellite, and then the rocket, instead of burning up, has reignited and under complete control has now landed itself, deaccelerated itself from tens of thousands of kilometers per hour down to zero and landed on a tiny little barge in the middle of the sea in a force 4 gale. As an engineer, I just went, What? Unbelievable. There's the SpaceX people celebrating. What do you see? You don't see many ties, do you? Too many males, but we'll come on to that in a minute. But fun, enthusiasm, young people having fun. There's the equivalent photograph from NASA when they first land on the moon. May I suspect they have a small problem with diversity. Fun. Oh, Stephen, please. This is a very serious industry. You know, it involves human life and a great amount of power, and you know, it's not meant to be fun. Well, actually, I would argue with you. Einstein. Creativity and problem solving is easy. You just get intelligent people together and let them have fun. Now, if you look at what Lockheed did with Skunk Works, a lot of it was you take the people that don't fit into the normal norms in Lockheed and you put them in a separate building and you let them do their stuff. And a lot of it was fun, but they came up with some of the most creative aircraft that mankind has ever seen. And by the way, SpaceX is not just a bunch of boys playing with their toys. This is the CEO, Gwynne Shotwell, an amazing lady. And by the way, been there since the beginning, 2002. It's not some token thing. She's seriously good at what she does. SpaceX is a flat organization, she said. Anyone gets to talk to anyone and the best idea wins. I never have felt any issues whatsoever about being a woman in tech. Married, by the way, married to a NASA engineer, bizarrely. As of 2020, she is listed as the 49th most powerful woman on planet Earth by Forbes. Wow. And most people have never even heard of her. You should do. Then the Financial Times in London. I opened up my Financial Times and out fell this. And I thought initially, is this a joke? This is meant to be a serious newspaper. A full pullout. Cosmic plans take giant leap from sci-fi to reality. Basically what it's saying is that, hey, this is a whole new Bazanda worth billions, if not trillions. Get in now at the ground floor. In our lifetimes, we will see commercial space develop into a multi-trillion-dollar industry. In our lifetimes, well, they got that wrong within a decade. And by the way, if you're interested, of course, you have to get the lawyers involved. One of the countries which is vying to have more space lawyers per square meter than anywhere else is, of all places, Luxembourg. I went out and met a whole bunch of space lawyers. It's very strange. They're all just carving up space. It's huge. The money is unbelievable. Meanwhile, Elon Musk basically is turning out spacecraft just like Toyota knockout cars. He's got production lines. They go up, they deliver, they come back, they get cleaned up, they get pushed down the production line. It's just incredible what he's doing. And then in 2018, he had a lot more fun. I'd love to have been in the boardroom. Elon, you know you make cars. Yeah, it's fun, isn't it? Yeah. You know you make spacecraft. Yeah, it's fun, isn't it? Yeah. Why do we put a car on one of your spacecraft? Why? Because it's fun? Yeah, let's do it. Can you imagine most boardrooms? Excuse me, how's this going to affect the taxation position on our quarterly report? Really, I'd like to see the DCF calculation on that one. Now, I have done some Monte Carlo analysis on this one. And by the way, as an engineer, those two rockets coming down together, excuse me, what you should do is you land one, you get telemetry, and then you double check everything, and then you bring down the second one. Absolutely right, by the way. I say that as a chartered engineer, but let's bring them down together. What the hell? Let's push it. Very, very strange behaviors. Now, he celebrated, possibly over the top, which gave someone else the opportunity to catch up.
Start, 2, 1.
And lift off.
5,000 feet and climbing.
That was a beautiful launch. And there it is, separation.
Now is the time to open the promise of space to all and lay the way for generations to come. When our descendants look to the stars, perhaps from a rocky moon or colonies floating in open space, they'll remember this time. When they reflect on where it started, they'll remember this place.
Touchdown.
And when they honor those first explorers who said, let's go, they'll remember these bold steps. We are of Blue Origin. And this is just the beginning.
And if you don't know who Blue Origin are, wow, are you off the curve in the nicest possible way? Because Blue Origin is basically the richest man in the world, Jeff Bezos. Amazon are now in space, and it's serious, really, really serious. It's not a boy's toy. And it's turned into basically the tortoise and the hare. And we'll come back to that in a second. Jeff Bezos, again, billions, trillions, it's just almost uncalculable. And he's been funding it with 1 billion each year, quite incredible sums of money from Amazon. And yes, you could laugh and say, well, I bet he hasn't got as much money on the divorce and all the rest of it. Well, apparently his attitude was, really, I'm not that bothered by Amazon. In fact, he stepped down now, in case you didn't know. And he said, I'm now going to give all my time to the bit of the industry that I think has most potential. And it's not more boring warehouses and trucks, get a life. Basically, Blue Origin. Now, he's not stupid. And this is where a lot of people get sneery with me and say, oh, it's just silly boy stuff. Two of the richest, most successful people on planet Earth, however you measure it, have decided that space is where the money is to be made and the future of mankind. Wow, they're not stupid. It's quite interesting when you look at his motto, which is step by step, ferociously. And you might notice that there are some turtles hanging on the shield. Why? Because it is now the tortoise and the hare. The hare is Elon Musk, impulsive, crazy, risk taker, running, falling down, making mistakes. And Bezos, very, very quietly, very, very steadily doing his race. And by the way, every time he uses one of his recycled rockets, he actually has painted on it another tortoise, in this case, another turtle. This was amazing. During lockdown, I happened to be looking up the sky. I live near to London Heathrow Airport, and I thought there'd been a huge accident because this happened. It was all across Northern Europe. Now, some of you may have seen it in the States if you're watching this from the States. I immediately went on, what the hell is going on? And it's satellites, a whole constellation of them. That's in real speed, unbelievable close formation satellites. Have the Martians arrived? Nope, Elon Musk had. Starlink, and if you haven't heard of Starlink, again, you're way off the curve, is on track to offer satellite broadband service in the United States in mid-2020. In fact, it got delayed. It's now available. I think you can buy dishes in the States. It's quite expensive. I think it's $800. They'll be down to, probably $8 or have it with a candy bar within 12 months. What's it all about? Basically, global domination of the telecoms market. He launched 60 satellites in May 2019 to test the system, all on one rocket, by the way. He was now launching 60 satellites a go. It's swarm technology. They go up there, they sort themselves out, or they fly themselves around Northern Europe, and they are going to cover the whole of the Earth. They've already got permission to actually launch 12,000, and he's going to have 30,000 by the time the system's complete in 48 months. 48 months. Ouch. Quite incredible. And by the way, last week, he now actually has 1,000 of them in orbit as a part of this system. So already a 1,000 up. It's being offered in the States, and it's now being offered in the UK as well. Makes 5G look a bit sad. And by the way, 25% of all satellites circling the Earth are now owned by Elon Musk. Meanwhile, not to be stopped, Amazon stepped in and said, we're going to do the same. 2019, they're going to actually launch 3,236 satellites over the next 10 years, tens of millions of people worldwide. And by the way, this isn't some clunky, slow, forget it internet. This is 1 gigabyte per second, and it's very low latency. In fact, it'd be less than fiber, because speed of light through glass is less than speed of light through a vacuum. Think about it. Now they're actually facing off to go to the moon. Unbelievable. They both said, yeah, we're both going to go to the moon. And so they're forming consortia with Boeing and with Lockheed and with NASA, and they're racing against each other. And Time Magazine, 1968, there they are, the Russians and the Americans racing to the moon. That was Time Magazine 2019. You can see SpaceX, the Chinese, NASA, and Blue Origin racing to the moon. Elon then got America back into space. It happened last year, quite incredible, 31st of May, 2 NASA astronauts, Bob and Doug, went up not on a NASA craft, but on a SpaceX craft. to the International Space Station. And it wasn't a one-off stunt. A few weeks later, they then got 4 people up and back down again. And aren't they natty spacesuits? And by the way, yes, they have fun with them. Instead of going up to the launch pad in the old, aluminum van, guess what they go in? Yes, it's inevitable, isn't it? A Tesla X, they have fun even with that. And why not? NASA, I'm not knocking them. They are a phenomenal organization. And I guess in many ways, they're now doing what they're best at, which is science. And the Mars lander, unbelievable what they did to get that onto the surface of the planet. And it's now obviously discovering things which are going to benefit us for Mars, because that's where Elon wants to go. That's what his dream is. And Bezos wants to build cities in space, which is not so crazy when you think about it. You think of the asteroids, the rare earth metals, the energy and everything else. We can do it. It's a new frontier, same way as Earth, the skies was a new frontier, when we started thinking about aeroplanes. And by the way, he's gone through another record. January of this year, he launched 143 satellites on a single launch. A single launch. There he is. He's now saying, let's roll this out across the UK. And it will integrate with 5G. Again, they're doing deals. They can actually get to remote areas using Elon's system and then spread it out with the fiber for 5G. So that's going to make him billions and trillions as well. And possibly have a complete monopoly on world communications. It's just like a James Bond film, isn't it? And Jeff Bezos has announced that basically in 2022, next year, he'll be able to throw 50 tons into low Earth orbit on his new rockets as well. It just doesn't seem to stop. The momentum is surreal. So these two are now facing off. They're going to change the world forever. How have they done it? Whether you love them or loathe them, well, I guess it's all about risk. And as Erica Jong once said, the trouble is, if you don't risk anything, you risk even more. So perhaps we have lessons to learn. But at this stage, exactly on schedule, because I am a project manager, I think it's question time. So can I have some questions, and we'll throw these ideas around.
Stephen, thanks very much. That really was very entertaining and really interesting presentation. So thank you so much. I am going to jump in with the first question, actually. And it follows on just where you finished. So Stephen, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, 2 very different characters and clearly very different approaches to running a space company. Which approach do you think is the best for a successful space company? Brash Musk or reserve Bezos?
Okay, I would say, and you're going to hate this answer, Simon, both. You need both. Competition is a wonderful thing. And the fact that you've got 2 such extreme styles means that, hey, you've got to get the benefit from both. And it is the tortoise versus the hare. Bezos is unstoppable. He will do what he's done with Amazon in terms of logistics. He'll do the same in space, and it will be steady, and that's just the way he operates. Whereas Musk is going to have explosions and failures. He's had one this afternoon. His Mars rocket, not going to Mars, but a test rocket exploded this afternoon. And I was just watching his tweet. It's like, oh well, we've got another one ready to come out next week. Let's have a go with that one. Yeah. And he's not stupid. That's what I find. So many people sneer at him and say, he's a stupid little boy, he's out of control, he should be stopped. All the stuff you saw in the video. He's just a very differently driven person from Bezos. And he ain't stupid. I was talking to an aerospace engineer, worked for one of the companies in ABC actually, and he said, I met Musk in the early days of SpaceX. And after the meeting, I fell about laughing out of his presence about how stupid he was and how little he really knew about aerospace. He said, I got invited to a meeting 12 months later, and I walked in and I felt stupid. I could not believe how much this man had learned about materials, jet engines, thrust, the ballistics, everything in 12 months. And he put me to shame. And after the meeting, I came out of that meeting looking really dumb. 12 months. He's a driven individual. So he ain't stupid and he isn't childish. So in answer to your question, both.
Thank you. We've had one question's just popped up. I've got a few more which have been submitted earlier. But this one's, bearing in mind SpaceX are now carrying out NASA missions. What do you foresee the risks when it comes to clash of culture?
Yep, and this is a good one. If there's going to be a defining moment for Elon Musk, it'll be when he has his first fatality. Now, that's an awful thing to say, but it will happen. And, we're aircraft builders, you build airplanes, they will crash. We hope, not many of them, but that's just what happens, because you're pushing technology and the unforeseen happens. So it will happen in space. And how his reaction will be interesting. That'll be a test of the mettle of the man. I suspect he's already very worried about that, apparently. So rumor has it, he gets really very agitated before a launch, goes around, and in his own inimitable style, shouting at people, anybody that will hear, the company does anyone know any reason why we shouldn't go with this rocket? Any reasons why, it's not safe or it might blow up? So he is getting worried that being at the head of a nice big organization now, of course, it's very difficult to get information to the top, as NASA discovered, and that's how they had their series of accidents. So that will be, a measure of the man. How well will he deal with that? Now, again, I did this to my MBAs a while ago, and one of them said, well, he should be stopped if that's the case. Really? I think the astronauts are aware of the risks that they take. And it's like Neil Armstrong, and he was asked what he personally thought was his chances of coming back from the moon on that mission. He reckoned 50-50. And people said, you must be mad to have gone. He said, no, because it was my dream. And there we come into neural diversity, all those wonderful things. At the moment, we've got a culture that tries to create cookie cutter employees. This is the way we like our cookie, this is the distribution of people. That's where we want them, in the middle. That's the sort of person we want. Huge mistake. And now a lot of companies I work for are looking for outliers that would look at risk in a different way, look at benefits in a different way, so that if the market changes, they'll be ready to deal with it. And I would suggest that Musk and Bezos are outliers to the normal distribution in aerospace. But yep, there will be an accident one day. It is inevitable. Space is very, very unforgiving.
Thank you. We've got two questions on Virgin Galactic. So the first one is, how does Richard Branson and his plans with Virgin Orbit, Virgin Galactic, fit into this new world?
Okay. Now, Richard, I used to work with him. He's one of, again, a risk taker. He also enjoys all the celebrity of it, and he was one of the ones that really, went for the X Prize as it was at the time, and was, really instrumental in creating a buzz around space. Now, what he's doing is basically what we call an up and down, and I know a lot of you know all about this, but let's just do 101 stuff. You can shoot rockets up in the air and then they come straight back down again. And you can go into the lower end of space and float around for a few minutes and then you come back down again. The clever stuff is to be able to go up and go around, as they say, so orbital. Now, he's not going orbital, he's going for the up and down, and there's nothing wrong with that. And a whole lot of celebs and rich people will go up and float around and say, at the dinner party, I've been in space. The real stuff is going to be the orbital stuff, but I'm not knocking what Richard's doing, and Bezos will do some of that. And I'm sure Elon Musk will as well, bit of space tourism, because it gets it all going. You look at the aerospace industry, in the 1920s, all the celebs, piling into airplanes for the first time, because it was seen as, a risky and interesting, a new thing to do, something to boast about to your friends, perhaps. And so that side of it, it's all good stuff, and it's pushing the frontiers, and they're learning about composites and engines. So I'm not knocking it at all, but mostly, space tourism. It's the industrial side that kind of interests me. It's be bigger money, as they say.
Okay, so the next question. So this is from Ray in Kent. He's registered to go on the galactic flight. ... Good idea?
Yes, absolutely. And well done, Ray. I join it as well. Again, we're talking about neurodiversity and risk. I would do it. And, I know the risks, and would I do it 50-50? Probably not. Would I do it 1 in 100? Yeah, I would. And don't tell my wife, as they say, or perhaps you'd be looking at the insurance. But hey, we are all wired differently. I've always wanted to go into space. I've always been fascinated by it, as is Elon Musk and as is Jeff Bezos, and as to a certain extent is Richard Branson. So it's horses for courses. And so, Ray, yep, I'm with you. If you can get a spare ticket, I'm with you. Okay.
Okay, next question. We have seen the government phase of space exploration. We are now seeing the start of space exploitation through the phase of the space barons.
Yep.
What is the next phase?
The next phase is obviously the reusable craft. It will become commonplace, and they almost have reached that stage now. It's like he sends up 143 satellites. You've got another one coming up next week. Like, so what? And these rockets, some of them are doing 9 missions before they need major refurbishment. So it's becoming commonplace. And so the actual unit cost of putting stuff up there has just gone down and down and down, and will continue to do so. Space tourism will come on next. The satellite business, as you've seen, telecommunications is going to make them a lot of money. So that's why Bezos and Elon Musk are into that, because they are going to connect up 5G globally and have monopoly. Think about it. Well, a duopoly anyway. The next one is the asteroid mining, far more difficult to do. Although again, with the use of robotics, you won't have to have people mining. It won't be like sort of Star Trek stuff. It'll just be machines out there, basically getting the stuff we need for our electric cars and the rare earth metals, stuff like lithium. Instead of digging it out of the ground and causing pollution, you just go and get a big lump of it from space. But that's going to change everything. So it's going to be like another oil boom in space. Also, of course, there's another industry which is building up very nicely, thank you, which is cleaning it all up. Because already there's a lot of space junk up there, which actually threatens the assets that are now going up. And so a lot of companies are now going to make huge amounts of money from actually clearing up the space debris as well.
Thanks, Stephen. Okay, another Virgin Galactic question has come in. Virgin Galactic might be a secondary industry in your view, but could it be the next phase of airline operations?
Now, yes. Obviously, when you look at Virgin Galactic and also Elon Musk as well, this idea of moving people around the planet at supersonic and hypersonic speeds, and of course he's looking at the Hyperloop to actually do it on land, which as an engineer, when you look at the maths, it stacks up. It's actually quite clever stuff. The capital costs are going to be huge, but given time, that one's going to be sorting city-to-city transportation if we still really need it. And certainly, a hypersonic flight, London to Sydney in a couple of hours or whatever. Some people will want to do it. I think COVID, in many ways, has changed that, because whilst the internet transformed, look at the death of Concorde. Concorde was really only there to get businessmen and women between New York and London rapidly so they could do deals. Once the internet came in, largely Concorde, you didn't have to do it because you could do it at the speed of light. And then space, does someone really need to go into space to get somewhere in 2 hours? The military, yes, and they are up there and spending billions, and quite right to defend their countries. So is it going to turn into a massive transport thing? I doubt it, to tell you the truth. I doubt it. I think it might even be knocked down on an environmental basis, but we shall see.
Okay, your slightly throwaway comment about clearing up space debris has generated a couple of questions.
Yeah.
So the first one is, how many more satellites can Earth's orbit take?
Okay, now again, without getting technical, and I'm no technical expert on this, so don't quote me, but they are at different levels. So you've got Elon Musk doing quite low level ones for his internet, that's why it's low latency. It hasn't got far to go. They're still in orbit, but it's low orbit. As you go further out, you've got the big GPS satellites and the rest of it. And space, as they say, is big, yes, but it is getting cluttered. And I'm sure you've seen the George Clooney movie where it all goes terribly wrong and they have a cascade, satellite hitting satellite and then destroying the ISS, and George Clooney doing his stuff. But that scenario is really possible. Now, there's a lot of time and a lot of money being spent to track virtually everything that's up there. And so with computing, they can work out where collisions are. And by the way, most of these satellites can move. So, that's the wonderful thing about Newtonian physics. You can calculate where everything will be at any one time. And so the computer can say, right, we'll just move that bit and then that will all be okay. So the computing side is kind of making it safer. But for instance, the Chinese did a missile attack thing and led to a lot of debris being flown around the Earth, which wasn't, in my opinion, the smartest of things to do, because someone's have to clear all that stuff up. Otherwise, we could have a collision. And, this is doomsday stuff. I don't want to, especially with COVID, but if we had that situation and all the GPS satellites went down, we're finished. Think about it. This would stop. Your phone would stop. Most of the power networks would go down. We'd be living in caves within months. Civilization would collapse. So it is very important that we take space junk seriously and start cleaning it up. And certainly in this country, in the UK, Surrey University and lots of startup companies are bidding for that work. In fact, there was a launch, I think, last week or the week before of test equipment to actually try and find these bits of junk. And then, of course, what do you do with them? What you tend to do is slow them down a bit, nudge them until they just burn up in the atmosphere. So it's incinerated, or you can just, push them to a higher orbit. But all of these techniques are being looked at, and it will, I'm sure, be a major industry for a lot of players. It's very clever maths.
Okay, so we're getting close to wrapping up, but I'm going to squeeze in a couple more questions.
Please do,
So
Simon.
who's going to pay for this, the cleanup?
The cleanup, basically, it will be the industry itself, because the industry is going to get to the point where it becomes uninsurable if there's too much uncontrolled junk up there. No one's going to insure any satellites anymore. And communications companies and everything else will start to clean it up for their own self-interest. And of course, there will be governments and possibly the United Nations eventually stepping in and saying, thou shalt. So a bit like we're beginning to grow up now with the environment, we're beginning to actually make sure that producers clean up their mess, and that taxation actually has some inbuilt revenue streams to actually clear up the pollution that we cause. So it will be market-led as opposed to the great and the good, but a combination of the two, because it's big money and you can't do it on a charitable basis, and it can't be done on a government basis. It has to be done hand in hand with industry, and therein lies a phenomenal opportunity for basically your industry.
Okay, so very quickly, because we are we've pretty much run out of time. So just before I hand over to Joe, one last question. What are the Chinese and Russians doing? Can you give an opinion on how they're developing against Elon and Jeff?
Yep, purely opinion.
Different aims.
The Russians, just basically a shortage of funds. Everyone sees them as the big bogeymen. I do work out there. I've worked out there for the last 10 years doing lectures for the MBA school. And they haven't got the financial muscle to actually compete. They're good, they're very good, and their technology is incredibly reliable, and their space industry is well developed, but they're not moving at the speed of, shall we say, the capitalist boys of Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. The Chinese, Bezos, I thought, was secretive about Blue Origin. He's opening up now, but the Chinese are very, very secretive about theirs, their technology, what they have and what they haven't got. I think they're having to play catch up, but hey, never underestimate the Chinese. They have the largest economy on planet Earth, and if they choose to focus it on space exploration, they are going to do very well indeed.
Stephen, thank you very much indeed. I'm going to hand you over to Joe. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Simon.
Stephen, thank you so much for a really fascinating and intriguing presentation. You, as advertised, thank you so much for that. On behalf of the full board of trustees, I want to thank you for your time today. I want to thank Simon also for your assistance, and a couple of housekeeping items before we say goodbye. First, I want everyone to know you're going to receive an email regarding today's event. There'll be a survey and hopefully the link to the recording. We'd appreciate if you could give us some feedback on the survey. And the second thing is to remind everyone to mark your calendars. The fall conference will be September 12th, 13th, and 14th in Scottsdale, Arizona. We are going to meet in person. It's going forward. We've been in touch with the resort. It's a very large resort. We'll be able to space out and have all our meetings. we're going forward. And also there are some sponsorship opportunities available for whoever is interested. Just feel free to look at our website. Thank you everyone very much for participating today. Stay safe and hope I see you all in September. Goodbye, everyone.